Okay, so can everybody see the screen, the title screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the logistics of our Tidepool education program. We have three ways that you can participate. We have Tidepool education, which includes classroom field trips out of the intertidal on low tide mornings in the spring months. Roving docents go out for a couple of hours during a low tide on the beach of their choice, and they help park visitors explore this area both with their own safety in mind, because a lot of people are new to the area or visiting the area and aren't aware of the dangers of the ocean, especially along the Sonoma coast, and also to show them how to explore the intertidal with respect for the environment. It's a very harsh environment, a very difficult environment for these animals to survive in. And so there are ways of showing respect for the inhabitants of that area. We also have a touch table that goes to schools and goes to different events. And you don't need a low tide day in order to enjoy it. And it gives kids and their families an opportunity to see some of these animals without having to go out at a low tide and get their feet wet. So teachers send in reservation requests, and we construct a schedule. And this is an example of what it looks like. And because of the way the tides work, we have good low tides every 2 weeks throughout the spring. So our schedule is kind of compressed. As you can tell, this is like 1 week in May where we have really wonderful low minus tides. And we have 5 field trips scheduled, and we have 2 of them scheduled on one day, as a matter of fact. And we will schedule 2 smaller groups. And what we do is we stagger their arrival times so that we go out to Miwok Beach, which is a nice long beach, and there's room to spread out, and we can handle 2 mid-size and 2 small-size groups without interfering with each other, as long as we stagger their arrival times. So we have 2 lockers, one at the General Visitor Center and one in Salmon Creek. Excuse me, I'm a little hoarse this morning too. Where we keep packs of materials. And each pack has some emergency contact information, a laminated list of talking points on ocean safety and tide pool etiquette. There's a small pocket down in the front that I'd like to point out because sometimes people forget about it, that holds magnifiers. We have rack cards with information on where people can take their dogs, because some of our beaches are not dog friendly. Information on exploring tide pools, rack cards on our environmental education programs, state park maps, volunteer opportunities, and rovers often assemble their own packs to take with them, and Karen can talk about this. And we have field guides. The 3 field guides that we keep in each of the packs are shown up here in the upper left-hand corner. The seashore of Northern and Central California is really nice. It's tough. It's kind of water resistant. On the back is a color-coded index, which is really nice. It's easy for finding crabs, finding nudibranchs, finding anemones, whatever you're looking for. Unfortunately, it's out of print. And if you're interested in having a copy for yourself, used copies are available online. The little blue Pacific Intertidal Life book is filled with black and white drawings, really good text. It's surprisingly comprehensive for our area. And if you're interested in having one of these in your own library, they only cost about $5. Now, this went out of print a few years ago, and we were scrambling to round up as many used copies online as we could. They were going for $75 and $80, if you can believe it. So we were really, really happy to see them back in print again. The third is a tough colorful field guide with wonderful photographs of animals. It has a ruler on the side. And I believe that these are still available at the Jenner Visitor Center, though I'm not sure. We also have sets of laminated field guides. One of them was put together by the Greater Farallones Association for their Olympics program. Wonderful, colorful guide that is very strong on algae as well as the animals. We have a Max field guide, which I don't find it's kind of hard to find what you're looking for on it. And then Tidepool Bingo is kind of fun. We can print copies that you can supply to kids if you're out roving. It gives them something to look for. They're black and white drawings that can be colored with short blurbs about each of the animal. Animals are on one side and the algae is on the other side. It gives people something that they can look for when they're out there exploring and gives them a little bit of information about them as well. And two of our packs also have first aid kits in them. So about a week before each field trip, we contact the teacher to confirm, and we come up with a pack strategy. So as you saw, we're going out there 3 or 4 or 5 days in a row. We don't want to be picking up the packs every morning and dropping them off after we're through and then picking them up again. So if there are people that are going to be out there multiple days, we'll do handoffs so that they can take them home with them and bring them back the next morning. The docents for a field trip meet in the parking lot. Maybe 20 schools are expected to arrive. Need out of the packs, we have vests, which identify you as being a docent so that you can easily on the beach. You come up with a game plan for the day, and I like to spend time watching the ocean at this point and just getting a feel for the level of energy and the character. It can look very calm, but you have some days with long period swells where you can experience runner waves or sneaker waves. I just like to be aware of it so that we know what to look for safety-wise when we're out on the beach. The kids arrive. Often they're in a bus. If they're in buses, then we can talk to them about ocean safety and tide pool etiquette in the bus. Often they arrive in multiple cars or vehicles. And before going down to the beach, if we haven't addressed them while on the buses, we talk to them about how to keep themselves safe and how to respect the animals. Again, it's gives them a chance to ask questions about sharks and things that they're interested in. I do send out our talking points on ocean safety and tide pool etiquette to the teachers a week before their scheduled field trip so that they can go over these things with the students in their classroom. They're a little bit more attentive in the class than they are when they're on the beach, anxious to get out there. So what are some of the points that we talk about? It's to note safety warnings on signs. The most important is never to turn your back on the ocean. The algae-covered rocks are slippery. And we talk about a 3-point stance for balance. And if any of you have walking sticks, you'll find that they're very useful when you're exploring out there. We ask the kids to stay with a partner and don't wander off by yourself. When we get down there, we want to leave our backpacks and lunches and whatever above the high tide line because the tide's normally coming in while we're down there, and we need to be aware of the incoming tide. As far as tide pool etiquette is concerned, this is a very, very challenging environment for these animals to live in. They have to deal with the extremes of wet and dry, temperature extremes, salinity differences, like if it's raining, then the salinity drops in the pools. There are challenges of predation. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there, so they have to be able to protect themselves against predators, and the predators have to find food to eat. So it's a very, very difficult place for them to live in, and we don't want to make it any more difficult for them. So we don't pull animals off of rocks. They are there, they're stuck there for a reason. They're able to withstand the wave surge. And where they are on a rock vertically is the optimal place for them to survive. If they're lower on the rock or higher on the rock, they may not be able to withstand either the wave surge or the dryness. We do handle some animals. There are some programs which are no touch. We aren't one of them. We do um, allow the kids and ourselves to um, explore and investigate them, but we always have our hands wet with seawater. As I said, one of the problems that they have out there during low tide is desiccation, and so we don't want dry hands pulling moisture out of their bodies. We always return an animal to where it was found, and again, because it was found in the one little niche where it can survive. And if lifting a rock to see underneath, be sure to replace it exactly as you found it and orient it exactly as you found it. A rock coming out of a tide pool can be a little universe of its own. They're covered with spirobids, bryozoans, all kinds of small animals, proliferating anemones. Those that live on the top of the rock are there because that's where they can live. Those that live on the bottom of the rock are there because that's where they can live. And we want to replace it carefully so that we're not crushing those on the bottom of the rocks either. And of course, no collecting of live or dead animals. The dead animals are serving a purpose. Their shells are there to serve as homes for like hermit crabs or food for others. Go over the ocean safety talking points. We start down the beach. The one thing that's really nice about Miwok Beach is we meet in the North Salmon Creek parking lot. There are restrooms there. Um, there are there's a variety of ecosystems that we're exposed to because we have the creek itself and then about a half a mile of sandy beach before getting down to the rocky intertidal of Miwok. We don't do sandy beach interpretation. We're normally kind of rushing to get down to the rocks so that we can maximize our time down there. Although occasionally a teacher will want to do some sandy beach activities following their field trip. And so, like last year, we had one class that was interested in doing a couple of things afterwards. And so we walked more slowly down to the rocks, pointing out a couple of different features of wrack and stuff that was on the sandy beach so that they were aware of that. I would like to do more, actually, if we have the opportunity to. The sand is not bereft of life at all. It's just that it's not quite as obvious. So once you get in there, we establish boundaries and have the kids park their lunches and their packs up high on the beach so that they're not threatened by getting wet by an incoming tide. And what I like to do is find a rock that looks like this. And can anybody tell me what they see on this rock, if they see any living forms on this rock? Well, most can't. And it's covered with an animal with aggregating anemones. And they are. And what these anemones do is out. They have sticky tentacles and they grab grains of sand and cover themselves. They close themselves up and cover themselves with grains of sand, which protect them from the sun and also protect them from drying out. And you'll see that there is a seam between groups of animals. Is my pointer showing, by the way?
Yes,
It is.
I
Okay,
can
good.
see it.
Okay, good. Thank you. These anemones, they can reproduce sexually, but their normal mode of reproduction is by cloning. And so these are two different clonal families of anemones with the seam down between them. They are very competitive for territory. And one reason that I like to point them out is that because we don't want kids climbing all over them. And so you want them to be aware of them. Here, we have the kids touch them gently so that they can feel the moisture that they're holding in. This is a photograph of an anemone that is budding. It is splitting. They actually can walk. And so each side is walking away from the other side. And eventually it'll just pop open in the center here, and there will be two genetically identical animals. And they can maintain these seams between clonal families for many years. This is tar spot algae that is growing in between them. It's a very, very slow growing algae. So it gives you an idea of how long these animals have been maintaining their separate territories on this rock. These are part of the cnidarian family, and cnidarians are characterized by stinging cells or nematocysts. And this is how they hunt. This is how they capture their prey, and also how they defend themselves. And so this photograph is a close-up of two aggregating anemones that are actually fighting one another. And these green tentacles here have nematocysts that they use for capturing prey. In the handouts, the folder of handouts that I sent to some of you yesterday, there is a document on the secret lives of some of our most commonly seen animals, and it has links to videos of some of these animals in motion, because when we're out there and we see them, they look like they're sessile, they're not moving, they're not doing very much, but they're actually very active. And as I said before, there is a strong predator-prey relationship and dynamic going on. And these green tentacles here use nematocysts for stinging and paralyzing small fish, even starfish, even sea stars, and then bringing the prey into the oral disc, into the mouth to consume. They, when threatened, they rear up and expose these white tentacles down here, which are also armed with nematocysts, which are actually almost like little missile silos. And they fire these stinging cells at each other in order to maintain their territory or to protect themselves. They're much more aggressive than they appear to us. There's also a link to a video of them fighting in that document. We bring a couple of containers with us, and we will put some sea stars and sea urchins and other animals in to share with everybody so that they have a chance to see them. We're very careful not to leave these containers in the sunlight because the water heats up very, very quickly. There's one group of life science seventh graders that comes out every year. She breaks them up into 2 or 3 field trips, and they bring their quadrants, and they have an exercise that we help them with, where we start off at the low tide zone, and the students document all of the animals and algae that they find in the low tide zone. Then we move to the mid tide zone and the high tide zone. And what I mean by the zones is there is a vertical zonation out there, just as there is on a mountain when you're talking about terrestrial animals and plants. These are black mussels here, and you can see a band of them on these rocks that are out at Miwok, and they're indicative of the mid-tide zone, for example. And you see that they don't go any further than this level on the rock here, and below we have the aggregating anemones. And the reason why is that they would like to live lower on the rock because they would be covered with water more frequently, which would help them keep cool and keep moist and give them more feeding opportunities. But the low tide zone is occupied by ochre sea stars, which is a primary predator. And the sea stars keep the lower parts of the rock free of the dense mussel beds, enabling other animals to live there and thereby increasing the biodiversity. We will go out to Campbell Cove like we're going out this afternoon. If we have a tide lower than a 0.5, we need a very low tide to get out to the jetty, to the rocks of the jetty. And we like to take the younger students out there, the kindergarten classes and first. There's no waves that we have to worry about. And Sarah here is holding, this is one of the stars of Campbell Cove, and it's a giant Lewis moon snail. And these are really wonderful animals. They have this beautiful circular shell and this enormous foot here, which is filled with water. And if you touch it gently, it will shed water and withdraw into its shell. And this animal is a carnivore. And it's a mollusk. Mollusks have a fleshy mantle, which is like it wraps around the body. It's what generates the shell. It has a muscular foot, and it has a radula. Almost all mollusks, with the exception of bivalves, have a radula. It's a tongue-like apparatus that's used for processing food. And those animals that eat vegetation, the radula can be like a file so that it can scrape algae off the rocks. This animal happens to be carnivorous, and its radula is like a drill. And what it'll do, its favorite food are the clams that live out there and the cockles. And it will chase down its prey. It burrows into the sand with this enormous foot. It'll chase down its prey, hold it down, and then drill a hole in the shell. And it's usually at the base of a shell, as you can see here. It will inject a substance, a chemical, which softens the meat, and then it will withdraw the meat, and that's how and then digest it, and that's how it hunts for its prey. So area facing a bay, a quieter bay, and you see shells that have this characteristic countersunk hole, you know that Lewis moon snails are nearby. And this, it looks like a toilet plunger, but it's actually egg casing of a Lewis moon snail. It's a combination of mucus and sand and eggs that you'll sometimes find in the eelgrass out there. There are other things that are going on at Campbell Cove that we want to pay attention to. We were out there with a group that noticed some tracks in the sand, and it was really exciting to them because they had a garden at school and they had these track boxes set up, and they recognized that these were raccoon tracks. However, in their garden at school, they just saw them in isolation. Here they could actually follow the tracks out to the water's edge. There's a photograph of the raccoon tracks. And there was a hole where the raccoon had dug up a clam, and then gone out to the water's edge in order to consume it, to clean it before consuming it. And the kids are really excited about following these tracks. And so, although we're out there to get out to the rocks and to see the animals out there, we don't want to be negligent of the other things that are going on. This is an sometimes see at Campbell Cove. They're often stranded up on the rocks during a low tide. It does not have a shell. And when I was mentioning the otherness of these animals, this is probably as other as it gets. It has a mantle here, which holds a liver and a pair of kidneys. So it has a lot of the same organs that we do. It has 3 hearts, one of which circulates blood, just as ours do. Two of them sit alongside the gills. This animal has very low blood pressure. It's been measured at 40 over 15, and it needs a lot of energy if it needs to propel itself quickly through the water. And so what these gills, these two extra hearts next to the gills do is they act like turbojets that suck in the oxygen and give them the energy to flee a predator. It has 8 tentacles and it has an enormous brain. These are very, very intelligent animals. And the brain actually extends down into each of the tentacles. And in some ways, these arms act independently. So this animal has 3 hearts and, in a sense, 9 brains. So it's very, very other. This is a baby octopus that we saw at a very, very low tide at Shell Beach. He's resting on my husband's hand and he's very relaxed. You can tell that the skin is very, very smooth. There are no white bumps. He's not changing color. And his eye was following me as I was moving around photographing him. He was just as interested in me as I was in him. As I said, they're very, very intelligent animals. This is a shell, and this is a sea slug or a nudibranch. And they come in a couple of different body plans. This one has these 2 projections up here are rhinophores, and they use these to chemically sense their way through the water. They can smell prey. They have a very limited sense of light and dark, and so these are their primary sensory organs. These bright orange finger-like projections on the back are the serrata, and they're multitaskers. They serve as gills. They also serve as a digestive system, but they're also used for defense. And these animals will prey on cnidarians, like anemones. They have a mucus that enables them to be impervious to the nematocysts or stinging cells of the anemones, if the anemone is their food of choice. And so they can absorb the stinging cells of their prey into their serrata and then use them for their own defense from then on. They're not born with these cells, with these stinging cells, but they use them for their own defense. And they get away, most of them are incredibly intense coloration, and they get away with this like butterflies do, and that it's a warning to others that I will hurt you if you try to eat me. This is a shaggy rug nudibranch. And again, here are the rhinophores and here are the serrata. And they come in multiple colors. They come in a tan color. The first time I saw a pink one was at Campbell Cove. And I didn't recognize it at first because I had never seen that particular color. And then I noticed it was a few inches away from a pink anemone. And so not only does it absorb the stinging cells of its prey, but also the coloration.
And Hollis, just to chime in quick, there's a bunch of the shag rug nudibranchs right now on the Sonoma coast, like more than seen for the past few years. So we can definitely look for them today.
And breeding, right?
Yeah, yeah, they're all breeding.
Yeah. This has a Dorid body plan, and please jump in. Amber, anybody else, jump in at any point, either with questions or with comments. The rhinophores are here, and this beautiful blossom back here are the gills. And so it's arranged a little bit differently, but it functions the same way. This is another one that's just called a sea clown. And this is another Dorid. So they come in different colors and a couple of different body plans. Okay, this is an ochre sea star, and it is a echinoderm, which means that it has spiny skin, and you can see the bumps. These are really hard spines, and they're very interesting. they begin life um, as a bilateral creature with a head. So by bilateral, I mean that they're symmetrical on two sides. The left side is like the right side, and then they have a head. At some point, they were thought to lose the head and become radially symmetrical. And in this case, it's a 5-axis symmetry. And until recently, it was thought that they were all trunk and had lost the head. Now it is thought that they are actually all head and that they have lost the trunk, which makes them quite interesting. This little spot here is present on all sea stars. It's a madreporite. It's like an intake valve of seawater. And instead of a circulatory system that circulates blood like we do, it has a canal system, a series of canals inside that runs a hydraulic system that is function of intake of seawater. And this is how they operate their tube feet. This is a diagram of this little intake valve here. And the seawater runs down these canals and into the tube feet. And here, holding on to this clamshell. So they're used both for locomotion and also for grasping prey. It's also used as a means of thermoregulation. When a severe low tide is coming, they can suck in an enormous amount of seawater. It would be the equivalent of you or I drinking 7 liters of water in preparation for a long, hot hike. And this enables them to maintain their body temperature while exposed to the warmer air during a very low tide. So this one is grasping a clamshell here, and you can see with its tube feet. And what it's trying to do is it's trying to pull those shells apart. And all it needs is a couple of millimeters, large enough opening so that it can insert its stomach and digest the clam meat inside the shell. Here's another photograph. You can see that the clam shells are opening here, and it's in the process of consuming this animal. The document that I was talking about of our most commonly seen intertidal animals has links to a video of a mussel being consumed by a sea star. They placed a small camera inside the mussel shell. So you see the stomach actually come into the mussel shell itself and then digest the meat. This is the stomach here. It's partially protruded. And this is a photograph that was recently published. It's the nervous system of a young star. And I just had to include it because it is just so colorful and so incredible. It was photographed by a professor from the Stanford Department of Molecular and Cell Biology. And again, it is an indication of this nerve ring. And genetically, the cells in all of its arms are much closer to the cells of a head than of a trunk. So scientists are learning something new about these weird animals every day. This is a bat star, which is another kind of sea star. And one of the reasons that we like to have the magnifiers with us is because when you get a close look at all of the little spines and all of these little structures that are used to help keep the body clean, it's just really quite beautiful close up. They come in all different colors. This was a bat star that was in a tray, and I turned around and it was trying to escape. And I just love the way it's hanging there, but we grabbed it and got it back in the water. Another echinoderm is a sea urchin. This is the bottom of a sea urchin. Um, the purple urchin begin life as green animals, not purple. And this one's an adolescent, I guess you'd call it, because it's in the process of turning from green to purple. But this is its mouth cavity, its oral cavity here, and you can see it has 5 teeth. It's called Aristotle's lantern. And they sort of have a bad reputation right now because of the collapse of the kelp forests. And this was due to the loss of the fabulous sunflower star, which be a couple of feet in diameter. You have 20 to 24 arms. We used to go out and see 4, 5, 6 of them on each of our field trips until the sea star wasting syndrome happened in 2014, 2015, 2016 with the marine heat wave. There are labs that are trying to grow sunflower stars in their laboratories, hoping to restore them to this environment so that we can restore the kelp forests that are off of our coast. The Pisaster, the ochre sea star, the common one that I showed before, disappeared during this time as well. And its recovery is really exciting to see, again, because it's a keystone species that helps maintain the biodiversity of this area. But those that we're seeing now are actually mutants in a way. It was a mutant gene that enables them to better tolerate the warmer water, and so they're less stressed. And because of that, their immune system is less stressed, and they're better able to deal with a densovirus, which is thought to have been responsible for some of the sea star wasting problem. So in a way, we're seeing evolutionary effects in real time, which is really kind of exciting. One of the results of the loss of the sea stars, of the ochre stars, was a proliferation of sandcastle worms, which prior to the blob or the marine heat wave was only seen at Pinnacle Gulch and on one rock at Marshall Gulch. And the loss of the sea stars enabled them to take over those lower section of rocks in other areas along our coast. Here they're scattered in among, a mussel bed. And this is a tube worm. These are the homes of a tube worm. They look like a honeycomb pattern. And this is the animal that makes them. This photograph was taken with not only a macro lens, but also extension tubes. So you can get an idea of how tiny it really is. And it's coming out of its tube here when the tide is in, when it's wet. And it has tentacles that it uses for grabbing bits of food out of the waves and out of the water. But it also has tentacles that it uses for building their tubes. And you can see all these little grains of sand. And what they do is that they're constantly grabbing grains, moving them around, feeling them out, and like expert stonemasons, they are gluing them into place in order to build these tubes, this colony of tubes in which they live. It's a very, very strong glue. There are chemists that are trying to replicate it for industrial uses. So far, they haven't been successful. But it's an amazing looking tube worm. So that's what's going on when you see these colonies. These can be quite strong. McClure's Beach at Point Reyes has reefs going out into the water. You can actually walk on the reefs. And this is another animal that joined us on one field trip. It's a little elephant seal, and it has a little blue spot on top of its head, and apparently it had been wearing a little hat with a number on it. It became a little too acclimated to people. It was from a rescue center. I don't know if it was the Marine Mammal Center or another one. It saw the kids on the beach and it just came running out of the water and joining them, looking for lunch. We called the Marine Mammal Center, oh, and they came out in the afternoon and it had left. It wound up on the beach. It went down to some wet sand and it was flopping sand all over its body and kind of took a nap and then took off apparently. So, participate is with our touch table, which is built by us for us by the Bodega Marine Lab. And Kathy, would you like to talk about the touch table?
Yeah, sure.
I don't mean
Sorry,
to
let me.
ambush you here.
No, no, that's
I'm glad
okay.
you're paying
So,
attention.
I'm paying attention. So this is a kind of a really cool tool to be able to bring to kids who can't necessarily get out to the beach, or also events like the North Bay Science Festival that's going to happen on March 8th, I believe. But so we borrow animals from the Bodega Marine Lab and also grab some seaweed. And so that the kids can actually really, with the help of docents, really get up close to these organisms that they might not have ever seen before. And the docents have questions that help kind of spur their observation, the kids' observation skills. And it's a really, really cool event. I don't know, it's been going on for 3 years. Is that right?
Um,
Hollis, or longer?
yeah, 2019, I think was the first time we.
Okay, so a little bit longer than that. But yeah, so we're working on some guidelines to kind of help structure it a little bit more. So if anybody's interested in looking at those red lines or those drafted guidelines right now, please. And if you'd like to join us, please, we could definitely use more hands. It's a very, very fun event, and everybody, kids as well as adults, get very excited about what we have to see.
And what we do is, like I should have mentioned on the field trips, when you're going out for the first time, we have you shadow an experienced guide, an
Yeah.
experienced mentor, and you can shadow as many times as you like until you feel comfortable. On the other hand, there are those people, I've had people shadowing me and I turn around and they're gone and I look and they're off running on their own. Some people are feeling comfortable right away. Others prefer to spend more time with experienced docents. And I check in with you after the field trip if you're shadowing to check on your comfort level to see if you're ready to go out on your own for the next one. We do the same thing with the touch table. So the touch table is going to Monterey School later on this month. And then, as Kathy mentioned, in early March, it's going to the North Bay Science Discovery Day. And those of you that are new, if any of you are interested in shadowing, please let us know and we'll get you on the schedule. Thanks, Kathy. Didn't mean to ambush you.
Oh, all good. Thanks.
Okay, and then the other way you can participate is as a roving docent. And Kieran, would you like to talk about that?
Sure. Um, yeah, so can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so being a roving docent is probably one of the most flexible things that you can do in the tide pools. There is a separate duty statement, and if you're interested in being a roving docent, you can reach out to Amelia to get a copy of that roving docent statement. It is also in our tide pool materials folder, and you can take a look at that. Having said that, it's very flexible. It's hard to describe exactly what it is, but basically it's being aware of when there's probably going to be a good tide for low tide tide pooling, being aware of a time when there are people likely to be out at the beaches, especially on lovely weekends when there's a low tide, and then simply being out there and interacting with people, helping them find things, helping them understand what they're finding, helping them keep themselves safe and keep the animals safe. And one of the most wonderful things about it is not only can you fit it into your own schedule and pursue your own passion at the beach or beaches that are of greatest interest to you. But you meet people literally from all over the world, and you will often run into, or at least I have often run into, families who have a child who has come in a school field trip and then has come back with their family. And they'll come up to me and say, "Oh, do you remember me?" Of course I remember you, of all the thousands of kids. And often I actually do remember the kid. I don't remember their name though. There are various other ways that you can rove as well. So recently I quote unquote roved by attending 5 sessions at different libraries in Sonoma County that were doing programs on sea stars. And I was able to go there and support their programming. In the link that you received by email that I also dropped in the chat today, I put in there an example of an agenda and materials from a recent Tidepool Roving docent training. In order to be a roving docent, you do not need to take any additional training, but often people feel a little uncertain of how to go about it. So usually a couple times a year, I will lead a roving docent training, and that just picks up from where this leaves off and sort of begins with, so you want to rove, how do you know what you should carry with you? Because basically you're a roving visitor center when you're a roving docent. I carry materials not just about the tide pools, but also about other things that are going on around the coast, like whale watching and seal watch, and materials on Armstrong Woods and maybe Salt Point and other places that people might want to visit. So you can take a glance at that. I'm not going to go through it, obviously, on this training, but you can take a glance at that to get a general idea of some of the things rovers do. And if there is interest in having another separate roving docent training, I will just reach out to me. My email is on in the chat as well, and I can either schedule that or I can let you know when I am going to be out roving, and you can come along with me, or you can reach out to Amber. Amber she just dropped something in the chat. I usually go to Shell because it's a very vulnerable beach, but Furlong is also a fabulous place. Some of our roving docents prefer to go to Campbell Cove, especially if they have balance issues and aren't as comfortable climbing over boulders. So we do have like a separate email list for people who are interested in roving. And if you're interested in being on that list, just reach out to one of us. We'll put you on the list, and then people use that list to coordinate with each other. Like, can I shadow you on a certain day? What's a good day to be out? I'm going to be at this beach on a certain day. Does anyone want to go? Etc. And it's also a good way to, find out about what may be, what may be good days and good beaches to be out. In terms of shadowing a rover, and if Amelia is still on, she probably can answer this, but my understanding is that in order to shadow a rover, you don't need to have signed the duty statement, the separate duty statement, but in order to actually sort of rove on your own, you do need to have signed that additional duty statement to be out there. Questions? Any questions about roving? Oh, and at Campbell Cove, I will be bringing like all of my roving materials so people can take a look. You can grab a bunch of handouts from me if you want. One of the things I always bring when I'm roving is a bunch of stickers, because people love, love, love stickers, grown-ups and kids. And I have a bunch of those that people are welcome to have as well. Any questions about roving right now before we let Hollis move on? Okay, back to you, Hollis.
Thank you, and thank you, Kathy. Okay, and this is just some of our docents at the end of the field trip, and you can see they're all grinning. So next steps. Please let me know if you plan to volunteer and in what capacity. I'm going to put my email address in the chat along with a link to a Tidepool folder that we have on a Google Drive that is filled with resources. Within that folder is another folder of orientation handouts, and they're handouts for today, but you'll find the schedule, the classroom schedule is posted up there. I'm working on the contact list. That's going to take a little while to solidify so that you can get in touch with each other. As I said, we have an email group, and if you're interested in joining us, we can get you added to that group. There is some state parks paperwork and duty statements, which Amelia will talk about, and we'll get you set up shadowing a veteran for any of the programs any of the 3 programs that you're interested in participating in. So let me know if you have any other questions before talking about state parks.
Hollis, I put the links to both the orientation materials drive and the overarching drive in the chat, so people can copy it from there. My email is also in the chat if anybody wants to reach out to me about roving or anything.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. I'll put my email address in there as well.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to see if I can get out of sharing my screen. I opened up Zoom last night and it updated itself. So it's a new interface yet again for me. Oh, stop share. Okay. So Amelia, do you want to talk about the state parks end of it?
I can, yeah. Thank you, Hollis. So I won't go into too much detail, but the required paperwork, it consists of a volunteer service agreement. And as a long-term California State Parks volunteer, you would be covered under our workers' comp policy and tort liability, same as an employee, if anything were to happen while you're volunteering. And always attached to the volunteer service agreement is a duty statement for the particular program or programs that you would like to be a part of. And there is, as Karen mentioned, separate duty statements for the Tidepool education program, which is for working with kids, and one for roving, which is a little more flexible and on the weekends. And then there's a couple optional forms. One is to let us know if there's a specific physician you would like to see in case of injury. And the other one is if you're okay with us using your picture for publications such as the California State Parks Weekly Digest or annual reports that I'm about to have to put together for last year. And there's also an online database that we use to keep track of volunteer time. I'll have to check the files to see if I still have your paperwork, but I will follow up with you, Judith. And let's see. Yeah. And please feel free to reach out with me with any further questions. And Lisa put Bet's information in the chat. She's the volunteer coordinator with Stewards of the Coast and Redwoods. We're here to help, and we can send the paperwork via DocuSign, which is pretty quick and easy. It'll just come to your inbox and you can fill it out, and then it comes right back to me. So,
thank
Amelia,
you.
This is Kathy. I have a quick question. If you've done live scan for another organization, do you have to repeat it for state parks?
yes. So there is a live scan requirement for the Tidepool education program because you'll be working with children. And yes, even if you've gotten your live scan done previously for another organization, we don't have a way to share results, even among state parks districts. So yes.
No worries. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. The form that we have links your results directly with our personnel liaison. So we have an agreement with the AIM Mail Center in Sebastopol and through the end of March. to go get live scanned. They have the form there, and there's no cost to you. They're billing us directly. So if there's any questions about that, please let me know. After March, we'll have another process, and I will inform anybody still needing to be live scanned at that point what that is.
Thank you, Amelia. I just want to piggyback on what Amelia said about Amelia is one of your resources, and Amelia can put her information in the chat. And then also in the chat is Bet Merritt's contact information. She's the volunteer coordinator for stewards, and she will be reaching out to you if you've registered for this week. So if you see an email from Bet, that's her following up on this this meeting, this training. Thank you.
Does everybody know where Campbell Cove is this afternoon? There's a map in the orientation folder. I've put another link, as Karen did, to the folder on the Google Drive that has handouts for today. Campbell Cove is located in Bodega Bay. And if you drive around the harbor as if you're going to Bodega Head, you go along the west side of the harbor. And instead of doing that sharp right-hand turn that goes up the hill up to the west parking lot of Bodega Head, if you go straight ahead instead, at the end there, you'll be in the parking lot for Campbell Cove, and we'll be meeting in the parking lot before going down onto the beach. But there's a map in the folder there as well. Are there any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much for coming today, and look forward to seeing you this afternoon.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks so much, Hollis. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. See you this afternoon.
Thank you, Hollis.